Hello, and welcome to Hour of History. We're glad to have you with us on Hour of History. It's our world, anytime, any place. And this week, for episode number 36, Menika Dirkson and I are going to be talking about the American Genocide, Dictators of the Americas. So we're going to look at two different nations, Haiti and the Dominican Republic, and brutal dictatorial regimes they had in the 20th century. Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Be sure to head over there and get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/Hour of History. There they have over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. And it's also a chance for you to check out books about this very subject, like Graham Greene's The Comedians, a book he released in 1966, criticizing the dictatorship in Haiti. Didn't go over too well with the press over there. And you're going to find out more as Menika and I talk about how these dictatorships slowly but surely create personalities that take over nations, often resulting in the loss of thousands and thousands of lives. So this is another very interesting episode for you. As always, we thank you for listening to Hour of History. Head on over to hourofhistory.com and leave us a question or email us with comments. Thanks a lot. Enjoy.
This is the Hour of History podcast. Our world, anytime, any place. And now from the Hour of History studio in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, your Hour of History starts right now.
Hello, and welcome to Hour of History. I'm your host, Stephen Bauman, and here in Hour of History Philadelphia studios, today we have Menika Dirkson, and we have a very interesting topic today. We're going to talk about genocide. Why are you smiling, Menika? It's not funny.
I know it's not funny, but it's going to be interesting discussion.
It's tough as a historian when you look at these topics like genocide, like violence, Oh, man, it gets overwhelming. So you have to keep a kind of light humor, but we take this very seriously, and man, I feel like I've read a lot of books about it. So who are we talking about today?
So we're talking about Haiti and a little bit about the Dominican Republic.
And so Haiti was, and dictators in the Americas. And so our president recently called Haiti a shithole country, right?
Yeah.
He was talking about basically just every country that's not America or United States. Not white. Okay, so that plays into what we're going to talk about today, right? Interesting. So where do we start with Haiti?
So if we're going to talk about genocide and dictators, and we're thinking about Trump in the back of our minds, if we look at it at a racial perspective and then go into an economic and political perspective, what I see with Trump when he talks about non-white countries like Haiti is going back to the 19th century with Anglo-Saxonism, in which Nordic and British races, ethnicities, so talking about England and Sweden and Finland, and those countries are seen as the highest on the racial hierarchy. And if you don't just have that ethnicity, that race, and also wealth, you're seen as subpar or at the bottom of the caste system.
Who's seeing them this way?
I would say the government officials, whoever is in power.
So the government of the United States, even the government of these countries, because Haiti starts out as Saint-Domingue, the French colony, and there's slavery, right?
Yes.
So, but that sort of predates some. You're talking more 19th century, right?
Yes, in the U.S.
Oh, okay.
So I mean, there's always been racial hierarchies in the United States coming from capitalism. And we talked about this in grad school about how Eric Williams, he has this argument about capitalism coming before slavery, and that it's the desire for wealth basically that leads to enslavement and leads to these racial hierarchies that maintain not only systems of racism, but also capitalism in which society is economically unequal.
And so Haiti and Dominican Republic, both part of this island, Hispaniola, they get caught up in this system.
Yes.
Because they're quite close to the United States, unfortunately for them. Interesting. Okay, so they're caught up in this, like, economy that uses enslaved labor in order to create wealth, basically, for a few people who own slaves, own plantations, but generally that's not a good place to be, right?
Yeah.
And that sort of perspective, you're saying those hierarchies continue on?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's like, it seems to be like countries like the U.S., Haiti, and Dominican Republic that had imperialism or colonialism. It's hard to like distinguish what's the difference between the two, but once you have like an imperialized nation experience like absolute control over their populace or their government, it seems like once they become independent, they still revert back to that belief that a leader has to be absolute and essentially be a dictator. And it's like Haiti has not loosened those chains of thinking that you have to follow the example of France and just all through its history. And Duvalier is like one of the most popular or infamous dictators when we talk about.
So who is Duvalier?
So Duvalier, Francois Duvalier, he was a doctor for the poor in Haiti, a native Haitian, and he wanted political power. He eventually rose to the office of president, and then by the 60s became president for life until 1971 when he died. And he essentially created a personality cult to cement his status as a dictator. So he already gained the respect from the community as being a doctor for the poor. Then he piggybacked off of Haiti's history of being former slaves who overthrew their slave masters, the French white and mulatto slave masters. So he made whites and mulattoes scapegoats. Then he utilized nepotism by putting his family, his friends, and political supporters in power. So basically in government, in the military. He also utilized violence by torturing and murdering political dissidents and even innocent people just to intimidate citizens and demonstrate his absolute power.
So if I can just, I mean, we're already getting an idea of who he is, which it's kind of weird to me though. Why would someone who's a doctor for the poor and a Haitian, like he said he was a Haitian, right?
Yeah.
Like he didn't see himself as separate or different, or did he?
I think he thought himself to be separate. I think it's about greed too. So capitalism again, and me being a socialist in a way, but
like when I hear people become doctors though, they aren't bloodthirsty.
Well, he probably just was.
What is he saying in Haiti? So, like, he was a doctor, in the 1940s or 50s?
Yeah.
And so what's happened? That's kind of, I guess we could talk about Trujillo at that point.
Yeah.
Is this jumping too far? Because, so Haiti and Dominican Republic share this island, but they don't share the same history. Haiti wins its independence from the French and becomes the first Black Republic, the second republic in the Western Hemisphere.
Yeah.
And Dominican Republic does not do that.
No.
Yeah, so that leads to some challenges, and they have different, Dominican Republic is a Spanish colony. So there's some differences there. Are they, so they consider themselves racially different?
They do, because the fact that Haiti was liberated by its former slaves, African slaves, it was actually built into their constitution that no whites or foreigners can own property in Haiti, stemming from the fact that the French owned property, they were slave owners, they had plantations, and that in the 1700s, Haiti was considered the pearl of the Antilles for France because it was the most profitable colony when it came to crops like sugar. And the fact that Haiti was exploited by whites, by imperialists, they sought to focus more on their African ancestry, the ancestry of the slaves and some of the mulattoes, and not only pay back their debt to France for ending slavery and abolishing slavery within the country and restoring power to Black Haitians. It causes Haitians and people like Duvalier to focus on African ancestry as being superior, upturning that racial hierarchy and capitalist hierarchy, putting Blacks, dark-skinned Blacks, at the top of the pyramid economically and socially, while Trujillo on the other side of the island of Hispanola is not free from that, does not have that history like Haiti of slaves revolting and gaining independence, but still relying on the Spanish and their history. So Trujillo, Rafael Leonidas Trujillo, basically installs a policy of anti-Haitianismo, in which whites are at the top of the pyramid, Blacks are at the bottom, automatically making Black Dominicans and Black Haitians at the bottom of society, and then adding the wealth aspect of it makes whites and wealthy whites at the top, and everyone in the middle fighting to get to the top, whether it's with blanqueamiento, so whitening of your race, marrying people of not only wider ethnicity, but also more wealth to make it in society that's been created based on imperialism.
Yeah, so these racial hierarchies are firmly embedded in really different ways in both countries. So Haiti doesn't allow non-Haitians to have land in Haiti. Yet, as we know, borders are constantly having people move across, especially when you're on a tiny island. In fact, like, I'm sure there was trade across these borders all the time. And, that when you trade, you typically set up things so that you have land. So that I can see that creating problems, but that also lasts for 100 years. That's a long period of time. And then you mentioned something else that maybe you could talk a little bit about. You said they had to pay back the debt to France for slavery. So France enslaved people from Africa, brought them to Haiti, and then they fought the French, and then the French made them pay back for fighting the French.
Yep. Yeah.
So how did that work? It's like they had to pay France back for not being slaves anymore.
Yeah, because France was a sore loser for losing the Haitian Revolution and Haiti getting its independence and not gaining that wealth that it used to from Haiti being its prize colony. So Haitians went back to the plantations and worked and used the money that they made through trade to pay back 150 million francs to France and basically wiped clean their debt for ending its slave colony. So all the money that France claimed that Haiti cost it, they paid it back and were basically financially stable. But it's until later on when you have dictatorships happening in Haiti that financial wealth and economic stability just goes awry.
Mm-hmm. But so the debt is like they have to pay down the debt. They're not recognized by the United States, which has slavery until after the Civil War or during the Civil War when the Confederacy is not going to Congress. So Haiti has a tough history. How does that work in with Duvalier? Do you know what he says about the history or about because a lot of times presidents and especially dictators are talking about destiny or Haitians are supposed to be, Haitians were the second republic in the West, does he talk about things like that?
I mean, in Haiti, prior to Duvalier's rule, they revered the heroes of the Haitian Revolution. So Henry Christophe that followed it, but Jean-Jacques Dessalines and Toussaint L'Ouverture from the Haitian Revolution that helped free Haiti from imperial rule. So since those people, Christophe, Dessalines, and
Louverture.
Yes, thanks. Were already revered in history. Duvalier piggybacked off of that history. He piggybacked off the fact that it was an African descendant nation that wanted to revert back to its African heritage. So he highlighted Vodun, a religious practice based on animism from West Africa, and made it superior to Catholicism, and just establishing or revering statues in Haiti that were Black, very African. So like a pro-African, pro-Black movement. So Noirism, I think it was the term that he used.
Uh-huh. And so that just meant like going back to, instead of Catholicism, which is French, instead of so on, even the French language is distinctly French, right? Haitian Creole is a different language. Yeah. And so that became the language.
Yes.
And what about the United States? So I know the United States was occupying Haiti for years, especially like during World War I. I think the years are 1915, 1940, around about that, where the Marines are in Haiti. And so the United States is heavily influencing Haitian culture leading up to Duvalier. He's growing up under American Marine rule then, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, so how does that impact him? What does he think about the United States?
So I think he was an opportunist because he was pro-Haitian, pro-Black. The U.S. is essentially in that period pro-white, pro-American, and you have an invading force, a foreign force in Haiti. So Duvalier wouldn't have appreciated that. But the fact that money would eventually pour into Haiti from the U.S. for financial aid, he saw it as an opportunity to be on somewhat good terms with the U.S. For example, when Haiti was struggling during his presidency / dictatorship in the 50s into the 60s, the U.S. was one of the main countries that gave Haiti financial aid. And Duvalier not giving it to the people, so food and money and things like that and other health resources, but he took about 80% of it and kept it for himself to increase his wealth and his family and other political supporters. So it's just an opportunity to the U.S. exploits Haiti for its colonial or military needs, and Haiti, under Duvalier, decides to exploit America in return, even if it's like a selfish deed to take money from your own country and your own citizens.
Right. So a dictator then is taking money from his own, or at least this one is not very benevolent, taking money from his own citizens in order to enrich himself. And that's sort of like a theme that Haiti has to contend with throughout its 20th century history, when, sending financial aid is a big thing that nations do, especially after the terrible hurricane in 2010, one of the biggest disasters in modern history. And people just reacted. I'm holding in my hands Humanitarian Aftershocks in Haiti, a book written by Mark Schuler, it's just a fantastic book that describes sort of how Haiti gets billions and billions of dollars and no one really knows, people know what happens to it, but it doesn't go to the right places. It doesn't solve the right things. And except that's a little different because NGOs are coming in. This is a Haitian taking from the Haitian people.
Yeah.
And so that's depressing. What about genocide? Like how are people dying in Haiti before we get to Trujillo?
Okay. So
like he's not systematically going around and killing Haitians, is he?
Yes and no. I would say that Duvalier. So, dictators always want absolute power and want to maintain it. So they always will use torture, murder, and intimidation against political dissidents and citizens, but Duvalier, he would extort money from citizens. So if they wanted a telephone line during his dictatorship, they had to pay, businessmen had to pay like $5,000 to have that established. So not only is he able to control who has modern technology, but also he can monitor it if they do decide to take advantage of it. Not Trujillo, but Duvalier, he withheld money from infrastructure funds. So he decided if money would be spent on roads, on telephones, on the international airport. And most oftenly, he didn't allot money to those resources. So you have many Haitians continually living in poverty because he doesn't want to allot funds. And when political dissidents like the mulattoes and Jeremy decided that they were going to start a revolution or protest, he sent his Tonton Macoutes, so basically his Gestapo, his secret police that would use knives and guns to kill dissidents and even burn down their homes and huts. So he did that.
So he established his own private police force to kill anyone who disagreed with him.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a pretty brutal dictatorship and certainly qualified. But I don't know if it qualifies for genocide. He's killing his opponents, right? And
also innocent people to make a point.
To make a point. And is he targeting anyone that, like, say they don't practice Vodun, or they practice Catholicism, or he's not going after people for that necessarily?
Yes.
He is.
They are targets.
So he's just going for anyone who doesn't fit his description of what is Haiti.
Yes.
Haitian. Wow. That sounds like terrible, but eventually he died, right? And then everything returned to normal.
Yeah.
No.
No, wait. 30,000 people died. So not just political dissidents, but whites, mulattoes, and black Haitians.
So it's absolutely brutal rule. And then who does he choose to replace him?
His son, who people call Baby Doc. So Duvalier is called Papa Doc, and his son John Claude Duvalier takes over and becomes the next dictator.
So direct nepotism, the family gets the next leadership, and he already has the tools, he has the secret police, he has the wealth, and he continues the rule. Right. Yeah. And he has the American support, and the Americans continue to give him aid because these guys are anti-communist, right?
Yeah.
And Haiti's very close to Cuba, and Cuba at this time, the revolution had happened. The United States had the blockade, so the United States needed Haiti to be on its side. So that's kind of one of the reasons the United States decides to support such a murderous regime. What about, do you know anything about the Haitians that leave Haiti or escape? Are people allowed to leave?
No one was allowed to leave, but there were some wealthy Haitians, mostly mulattoes, maybe a few whites, who were educated and had money, would leave Haiti, and it resulted in a brain drain.
Oh, okay.
So you have all these people that are either aspiring or already doctors and lawyers and other high-ranking white-collar professionals leaving the country. So you're stuck with a bunch of uneducated, mostly or majority uneducated Haitians who are living in poverty and have no way of getting out of it, and also not willing to overthrow their government or challenge their dictator because they fear violence and murder.
So that's just, a terrible situation. And no one's really doing anything. Everyone's happy in the surrounding areas as long as Haiti's not, making any waves.
Yeah.
It's because of its sort of geopolitical irrelevance at that point, really. As long as they aren't communist like Cuba for the United States, or in Cuba's case, strong enough to challenge Cuba, that's a terrible situation. Can we talk a little bit about what's happening on the other end of Hispanola now with so Duvalier happens, his years are 1957 to 1971, and then his son is in power 1971 to 1986, but Trujillo's earlier.
Yeah.
But a lot of it shares the same similarities, because when the United States sends Marines to Haiti, it sends them to Dominican Republic as well. So how is Trujillo different than Duvalier? You described it a little bit when you were talking about how the Spanish sort of racial classification system was a little different than the French slave system.
Yeah. So, I mean, the Dominican Republic still holds tightly to its Spanish heritage because it doesn't have that example like Haiti of having blacks or slaves overthrow imperialist power. So Trujillo, being a military, I believe he was a general?
Yeah.
Yeah. He already had that respect in society for that social status, that career status. So he took it further when he became ruler of Dominican Republic. And being a dictator, he wanted to use propaganda, so he would have his face and name on license plates, on pamphlets, posters.
In fact, when you're enjoying in a delicious El Presidente cerveza, guess who El Presidente is? It's Presidente Trujillo. Yeah, a lot of people don't know that. They see Presidente Beer and they just think, oh, who's the president? Haha, it's cool. No, genocidal dictator.
Yeah.
So he creates a cult of personality. So that's a sort of standard form of dictatorship then.
Yes.
And he was a little earlier. So he's in the 1930 to 1961. It's interesting because this kind of matches the time period that Cuba is ruled, towards the later period. Cuba's ruled by a military dictator as well. So, in Dominican Republic, we have a cult of personality. What else do we have under Trujillo?
So we have violence against political dissidents. So, I mean, Trujillo would have his police kill protesters and underground newspaper creators like the Mirabal sisters, who were known as the butterflies, on the side of the road. So there would be these freak accidents that Trujillo and the government would claim happened to these protesters, and everyone would know that it was a hit put out on these individuals.
Wait, who are the sisters?
The Mirabal sisters.
And what is that? Butterflies at this side?
They were called.
You confused me. They kill people?
No!
Oh.
No, the Mirabal sisters were I think at least 5 women who were blood related. They were involved in an underground newspaper and protest against Trujillo. And one of them was a lawyer. And eventually they were murdered on the side of the road in, I think, the 60s.
Because he clamped down on the press because it wasn't favorable for him. Interesting. And then they died, but it was mysterious death or...
Yeah, it was supposed to be a mysterious death, maybe a car accident, but they were actually killed on the side of the road, and their bodies, I don't think, were found.
Wow. And, okay, so he's clamping down on the press, ruling as a military dictator. And what are the racial politics of Trujillo? So
Trujillo, to further piggyback off of Dominican Republic's racial history, since Spanish heritage is prized, he sought to see himself as more Spanish, so he would wear his military outfit often in pictures and on special occasions. He chose to have his family embrace its Spanish heritage, so he would claim that he would prefer mulatto mistresses. I mean, he says that he would like Spanish blood and Spanish women or Spanish wives, but he in turn would strangely choose mulatto mistresses, which kind of goes against his policy of anti-Haitianismo, where it's anti-black, it's anti-Haitian, and basically saying that you should whiten your race. If you're Dominican, you should marry upward by marrying someone who's whiter. So he had that policy of la blanqueamiento, so the whitening of your race, the whitening of your skin, so marrying upward. So not only welcoming European immigrants, but also Jews during the World War II. He was highly approving of that, to encourage Dominicans to whiten their race. And then on the flip side, he also murdered Haitians that decided to come across the border of Haiti and Dominican Republic. So he killed like 20,000
Oh, wow.
who wanted to work in the Dominican Republic.
Yeah. So there's a lot there. It's really interesting. So you mentioned the whitening, and like this is kind of what I study, or what I write about with Jews trying to escape Central Europe in the 1930s, right as their rights are being taken away in places like Germany. There's a conference held in Evian in France in 1938, and Trujillo sends a representative, as does FDR. Franklin Roosevelt, President of the United States, also sends a representative, Sumner Wells. Franklin Roosevelt says, you're not going to accept any Jews. Like, we're going to go to the conference and we're going to, there's like 42 nations go to the conference, but you're not going to accept anyone. Trujillo offers to accept 100,000 Jews. He says, we will take all of the Jews from Central Europe because they look like Germans. Mm-hmm. And then he gives 26 acres. Sosua is a coastal area in Dominican Republic. And he says this is going to be the Jewish colony. By 1938 and 1940, by the time the work gets done to sort of establish this area and the work with the Jewish Distribution Committee to get the Jews to Dominican Republic, it's too late, and only about 500 make it. It maxes out at 500 people, but those 500 Jews who made it to Dominican Republic see this guy as a hero, right? Because no one else in the Americas was letting Jews in really in large number, and he pledged to allow 100,000. Yet at the same time, you mentioned he is murdering Haitians who cross the border.
Yeah, immigrant workers. Yeah.
So immigrant Haitians who are part of the same island, who are doing work and trading with Dominican Republic, are killed in the thousands.
Yeah, and I mean, from what I remember, I think his grandmother was Haitian as well, Trujillo.
So he liked his mistresses to be Haitian, his grandmother was Haitian, and he was a murderer.
Yeah.
It was like the sort of self-hating thing that we see with dictators a lot of the time.
Yeah.
We also see this contradiction with dictators in the Americas with like positive, not so much with Duvalier. Was anyone proud of him? I guess you could say like defenders of African traditions. Like how did the voodoo people, the voodoo community,
I mean, at first, Duvalier wanted to promote like a syncretic practice of Vodun and Catholicism, so combining both and worshiping both, or likening...
Like Santeria?
Yeah, so like likening Catholic saints with African gods or spirits called Loas. And then, what's his name? Duvalier would then promote Vodun over Catholicism. So in one case, he wanted to completely wipe out Catholicism in Haiti. So he wanted to intimidate Catholics, be it Haitian or foreign Catholics, and he had a priest sacrifice a pig on the steps of a Catholic church, and then he drank the pig's blood.
Just in front as like a PR thing.
Yeah.
So I imagine like even his supporters were kind of like, we're glad you're supporting us, but like we don't want people to think like this must have been reported in like Dominican papers.
Yeah.
Like look what's happening on the other side of the island.
Yeah, like don't go there because we're Catholic and you're...
Interesting.
Yeah, and then additionally, like Duvalier wanted to be deified in Haiti, so he tried to liken himself with this Loa called Baron Samedi. So Baron Samedi is an African spirit that wears dark sunglasses, and I think he has a cane. So Duvalier would also wear dark sunglasses, talk with a low tone voice like Baron Samedi's supposed to, and walk with a cane, just to make Haitians believe that he's divine. Well, I don't know. This is more or less like rulers or kings and queens in Europe, but
right.
Thinking that if you're divine, you deserve right to rule absolutely in government, in your nation. Yeah.
Yeah, I recognize that name from James Bond, Live and Let Die. One of the bad guys, of course, is Baron Samedi. So he did have supporters, but maybe not as much as Trujillo. Or maybe it's probably equal. People were scared of dying and wanted to get on with their lives, and that was the only way to sort of do it, is pledge your loyalty to this guy who could do anything at all.
Yeah, and Duvalier not only got loyalty, but like $10 million a year at one point.
From whom?
From extortion of citizens.
But I can't imagine
financial aid from.
But they didn't like him when he was doing it. Right?
I know, but
so how come? So Trujillo gets assassinated.
Yeah.
How does Duvalier survive? It's his secret police, probably, right?
I'm not sure. Yeah, I would say the secret police, but it's like it doesn't make any sense that you would support a ruler that's more wealthy than you, is violent, and uses violence to control you.
Unless, of course, you don't have any way to not support him. So, like you said, the Haitians they don't have an education, and so what are they gonna do?
So, I mean, since there's the brain drain, you have the professional and the wealthy classes leaving Haiti. You have only the poor, and you can't get educated in Haiti during that time period unless you have money. And even if you have money to go to school, you have to be able to learn and speak and know French to carry on with your studies. So if you only know Haitian Creole, you're poor, you don't have a job or money. And then there's Duvalier and the government and the Tonton Macoots, like enforcing you to be satisfied with your position and stay in poverty because they're not going to fund infrastructure, they're not going to fund education, and the only way that you can rise in society is if you join this Gestapo police. Then you're basically stuck, and if you're already stuck, then I guess you're not willing to revolt against your dictator.
Right. Well, because that's kind of the narrative, too, that's pushed a lot of with revolutions, is like, well, when people get fed up enough, they'll revolt. Do you think that the United States was counting on something, or the United States didn't really care as long as he was anti-communist?
Yeah. I mean, I have some issues with that.
Right.
With the fact that the United States, on many occasions, they will support anyone, be it a dictator or a government, that is anti-communist, but it's not considering that you're supporting someone that promotes violence, promotes corruption. It's like you're so set on furthering your own cause and trying to control others and their choice of politics, and you're ignoring like the atrocities and like human rights violations that occur in the places that you sponsor just because they agree with your politics or accept your politics. Right,
because the United States was certainly not putting a blockade on Haiti or Dominican Republic, which a lot of these years are overlapping, which at the same time the United States is very clearly trying to undermine the Cuban government. I read a couple times that there were Haitian exile invasions attempted, but it was nothing that was ever successful, or close to being successful. It's like you're in a pretty tough position when someone has total power over you. I mean, it seems like kind of common sense to say, but it's hard to understand. And something I wanted to ask is, do you remember hearing about these dictators or these places in your education? Because this is we're estimating 50 to 70,000 innocent people being slaughtered by their own government in the neighborhood of the United States.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't like personally heard a lot about them from others. I mean, in undergrad, when I took Latin American studies, that's when I heard a lot about them. But I mean, I really would like to hear from some Dominicans and Haitians today about their parents' experiences or their grandparents' experiences with living under those rulers, because it's fascinating to know that not only did they survive, but how did it shape them as a person, their politics, how they view violence, how they accept or don't accept violence. And
well, yeah, the Junot Diaz wrote
that book too,
The Fabulous Life of Oscar Wilde, which I think that's how 90% of the people who know about it learned about Trujillo. Because he talks about the sort of violence and the sort of indiscrepant murdering that happened under that regime. But it's sort of extraordinary to me that kind of thing, these kind of things happen so close to the United States, and we're talking a significant amount of people, thousands, 50 to 70,000 people murdered by dictators' regimes is essentially, it's just not talked about.
Yeah, I mean, Junot Diaz's book is a great way to like talk about that dictatorship in Dominican Republic. And I mean, it's a shame that you have to read a novel just to hear about Dominican history. You can't even learn it in your own school.
Right. What are historians doing?
I know. And I mean, average people are not going to read like a dissertation like Jesus de Galindez has his dissertation, which he basically died writing because
Tell us
he was
about that.
killed.
Yeah, who's this guy and he was writing a dissertation on what?
On Trujillo and his regime and how Trujillo was had a personality cult where he had his name and face on public buildings and stamps and things like that, but also like killing political dissidents and all these mysterious deaths. So Jesus Galindez, I think he went to a university in New York. He just turned in his dissertation on Trujillo's regime, basically giving all the dirty secrets and stuff, being a Dominican himself, about how Trujillo is being a violent dictator and not much is being done to overthrow him. So in 1956, he was going into the subway after he lectured at Columbia University, and he disappeared. So it's believed that he was kidnapped. He was put on a helicopter or plane to Dominican Republic under Trujillo's orders for writing the book, and he was tortured and killed.
Wow. This is like Vladimir Putin level stuff. Taking people. So I guess that brings us to like signs of dictators and modernity. So Putin is, and Matthias and I did an episode on this, Hour of History episode, talking about sort of the origins of dictators going back to ancient Rome. And now we're looking at dictators in the Americas. That's certainly a case if people are being taken from countries. You also mentioned a couple other things that typically make dictators like these. What are they?
I mean, a personality cult is like maybe the foundation or part of it. So you have to have money. So either you have your own wealth or you extort wealth to buy support. You use violence to control people and get them to submit to your will. You use propaganda. So just having your face, your name, your voice, and your image all over a nation so that people not only revere you but fear you. Nepotism, so put like family and friends and other supporters in power so that you can maintain absolute power without question. You create a scapegoat, so like Duvalier and Trujillo, they each picked like a racial, ethnic, and like social, economic class. So Duvalier picks whites and mulattoes as the scapegoat, the reason for the problems of Haiti. And Trujillo picks blacks and Haitians and mulattoes to a certain extent for the problems in Dominican Republic. And then, I mean, to even get to the status of dictator, you have to have some kind of respect in the community or the nation. So, like, Duvalier was a doctor, Trujillo was a military general, and then some people, if you're rich or a celebrity, you can get that foot in the door of becoming in power and then a dictator.
That's, I guess, the ones I'm curious in are like, I'm curious about the transition to the dictatorship and who's supporting them, because like when you look back 40 or 50 years, it's easy to say Duvalier killed 30,000 Haitians. What was Haiti thinking? But there were clearly people that supported him. There must have been people willing to go along with his plan, if not to get rich or whatever. Same with Trujillo. So I'm curious about those people. It's also frightening, the list you make, because I see a lot of similarities to what we're going through now. Mark Twain famously said, "History doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes." Mm-hmm. Are we seeing rhymes right now? do you, as someone who studied Duvalier and Trujillo, do you see similarities? Yeah,
and I guess to make waves with Trump, there's a lot of similarities in dictator-like behavior.
So give me an example.
So I mean, with the nepotism, so Trump has his daughter, his son-in-law in government, on staff. He has friends, so his lawyers, his other business partners. Like, even with Puerto Rico, he had a former business partner being in charge of rebuilding Puerto Rico, and it didn't even work out for the island.
So that sounds like something Duvalier would have done.
Yeah. And then with like scapegoating, so scapegoating Muslims, scapegoating immigrants, scapegoating non-whites, and Democrats.
Okay, so this is helpful to be like sort of, I mean, we should avoid presentism, right? Things are not the same. Yeah. But at the same time, it's helpful to sort of see, like the arguments for that are saying, well, he's scapegoating Muslims, but look, there was a terrorist attack in Toronto. That's, so I wonder, were people in Dominican Republic saying, look, some weird stuff's happening on the border, but they're really ruining our GDP, or they're really like they're taking from our country. Do you think it was a similar argument?
I think so, but the problem is people just make things so simplified. They don't know all the details. They don't look at the politics, the economics, and everything that comes into play, or the history behind it.
Right.
I mean, yeah.
And it's interesting, the like personality cult aspect. So Trujillo has the power to make El Presidente Beer in his own image, but Trump, what does he do? How does he do it? I hear his voice every day, but I don't follow Trump on Twitter, but I would say 50 to 70% of my Twitter feed is about Trump.
I know. So he finds ways to get into people's Twitter feeds and mass media. So if he does something outrageous because he keeps tweeting on Twitter, he wants, I mean, even when he gives like speeches or messages to the nation, he wants the prime time slot. He gets like the 9 o'clock slot, knowing that he'll be on Fox, he'll be on, was it CBS, was it NBC and ABC, basically wiping out the scheduled programming. He knows that when he has to make a speech. He also does those rallies. Right. So, and those rallies are always covered and widely distributed on the internet. And so is the, so he's, are you saying he's creating a personality, or is it the news is creating a personality cult because they're struggling to survive? I don't know. It's complicated. I think it's both. Yeah. However we can sift through that. Right. But. Yeah, it's interesting. So it's just like a,
when flying a plane and one wing fails, you start in a spin and then the other wing fails, and that's when you get into a death spiral. So just a little aviation anecdote there. Interesting. So you see some similarities in the dictatorship, but a key difference. There's not, that we know of, thousands of people being murdered.
Yeah. But I mean, those detention centers for immigrants and the children, and then the travel ban that restricts travel for immigrants. There were even people that had visas to come to the United States. I think it was like last year in January. Mm-hmm. They couldn't even get in the country because of the ban that he created. So, I mean, if you want to call that like soft power, or like not really violence, but like I'm not sure how you would call it, but it's still like a form of violence, but not like deathly
it's not death, yeah,
or life-threatening, but
yeah. So I like so long as he doesn't start killing people,
yeah,
or directly. I mean, he's placed his. So we talked about nepotism. He's placed a lot of people that are close to him. You gave the Puerto Rico example, which I think is an excellent example that no one talks about. Puerto Rico is in the news for Despacito only.
I'm still mad about that too. But.
Yeah, but so no one really talks. Governor Andrew Cuomo just went to Puerto Rico, doing his election season videos.
Yeah.
He was chopping down a wall. It seemed very helpful to the people of New York. But the people in Puerto Rico seemed to appreciate that, at least, even if it was political grandstanding by a wildly corrupt politician, at least he was in Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
I mean, beside throwing the paper towels at people, Trump hasn't been in Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
He hasn't been back, right?
Yeah, and I think the reason why Puerto Rico doesn't get what it deserves with financial aid and proper treatment from the government is because even though they're citizens, they can't vote for president. So it doesn't matter how Trump treats them, because they can't influence the election unless they get to the mainland.
So you think if Puerto Ricans could vote for president, Trump would build he would take care of them?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, I think that's a fair. Well, it's interesting when he makes the comments about winning the electoral college but losing the popular vote. He always says, "Well, if I was supposed to win the popular vote, I would have won the popular vote." And as cynical as the comment is, I think there's truth to it. Because you mentioned it was the same with Trujillo and Duvalier. The goal was to stay in power. It's the same with any government. You don't have to be a dictator. Any political party, the number one goal is to stay in power.
Yeah.
It just unfortunately ends up ruining a lot of people's lives.
Yeah.
So Haiti now, we didn't really talk about where these countries are presently, but needless to say, with this kind of history, it's not been easy for them, right?
Yeah.
But you made a good suggestion. Talk to people. One thing I did, and as we're winding down here, I always love to do my teaching stories. I taught in a Dominican area of New York, East New York, and one of my classes was almost entirely Dominican immigrants. And same with the high school level. It was mostly Jamaicans, but Haitians sprinkled in there, and the Haitians faced enormous prejudice. But one thing that was common among all these immigrant communities was that they were all interested in learning their own history. But the New York State curriculum, like we sort of mentioned, had very little on Haitian or Dominican. It didn't even talk about these thousands of people dying in what was these children's, background, their heritage. So I think that would be a productive step. And although people criticize the Common Core, one of the things the Common Core allowed you to do was it wasn't telling you precisely what you had to teach. It was telling you you had to teach this skill. And from that skill, I would have been able to teach, say, Dominican history. And I think that really makes a difference to kind of learn that history. So last thought of this, the thing we've been doing now on Hour of History episodes is we make one suggestion at the end of the show for the listeners. It can be anything. It can be a book. It can be a movie. It can be anything that you've found recently in the media. I'll go first. My suggestion this week. Oh, maybe I shouldn't. I always make my suggestions based on aviation, but that's not. Or manatees. Maybe I should do an actual history suggestion this week. You know what? No, I'm not going to.
Okay.
I've been watching on Netflix this Spanish, Mexican television series, telenovela, La Piloto. It was on Univision last year, and it's about a woman who wants to be a pilot and gets caught up with narco drug traffickers, and it is just fabulous. So that's my suggestion this week, the TV show La Piloto.
Well, I don't really have a non-scholarly suggestion, but
No,
I mean...
please, we like scholars too.
Okay. I don't know. I mean, they could just read a book about Haiti and the Dominican Republic. There's like a book by James Ferguson called Papa Doc and Baby Doc on Haiti and the Duvaliers. And I mean, there's also a film about the Dominican Republic called In the Time of the Butterflies.
Good.
Yeah.
And that's about the butterfly people.
Yeah.
Oh, In the Time of the Butterflies. Excellent. And Papa Doc, Baby Doc by James Ferguson. And that's available at your local library. So thank you for listening. This is Hour of History, where it's our world, anytime, any place.